Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Right here is Miss Joy Graves. She's going to be talking about her legal case fighting the courts here in Oregon regarding marijuana. Next to me is Mr. Casper Leach, the godfather of marijuana television in America. And standing by in the wings, ready to bring you more great music, is Mr. John Cornett. Hey, John.
Hey, Mom.
We have some ground-shaking stories for you tonight with hemp news, a lot of show and tell or sharing items to share with you as well. We'll be taking your phone calls shortly, so stand by as we bring you another great episode of Cannabis Common Sense. Here are our famous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Our first story tonight is from Washington, D.C. Today, United States Representative Earl Blumenauer of Portland, Oregon here, and Representative Jared Polis of Boulder, Colorado, introduced two bills that together would legalize and tax marijuana at the federal level. Representative Blumenauer's legislation, H.R. 1014, the Marijuana Tax Revenue Act of 2015, creates a federal excise tax on non-medical marijuana sales and moves this quickly growing industry out of the shadows. Representative Jared Polis's legislation, H.R. 1013, the Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol Act, removes marijuana from the schedule set by the Controlled Substances Act and transitions marijuana oversight from the jurisdiction of the Drug Enforcement Administration to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and regulates marijuana like alcohol by inserting into the section of the U.S. Code governing intoxicating liquors. More than 213 million people live in a state or jurisdiction that allows some form of legal use of marijuana today. 23 states currently allow for medical marijuana, while 4 states, Colorado, Washington, Alaska, and Oregon, and the District of Columbia, recently legalized the recreational use of small amounts of marijuana. 11 additional states have passed laws allowing the use of low THC forms of marijuana to treat certain medical conditions. Following federal legalization, the Marijuana Tax Revenue Act would impose a federal excise tax on the sale of marijuana for non-medical purposes, as well as apply an occupational tax for marijuana businesses. The bill would establish civil and criminal penalties for those who fail to comply, like those in place for the tobacco industry. The bill also requires the IRS to produce periodic studies of the marijuana industry and issue recommendations to Congress. It phases in an excise tax on the sale by a producer, generally the grower, to the next stage of production, generally the processor, creating the usable product. This tax is initially set at 10% and goes up over time to 25% as the legal market displaces the black market. Medical marijuana is exempt from this tax. The Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol Act would remove marijuana from the schedule set by the Controlled Substances Act and transition marijuana oversight from the jurisdiction of the Drug Enforcement Administration to the FDA. The federal prohibition of marijuana has been a failure, wasting tax dollars and ruining countless lives. As more states move to legalize marijuana, as Oregon, Colorado, Washington, and Alaska have done, it's imperative that the federal government become a full partner in building a workable and safe framework. Over the past year, Colorado has demonstrated that regulating marijuana like alcohol takes money away from criminals and cartels, grows our economy, and keeps marijuana out of the hands of kids. While President Obama and the United States Justice Department have allowed the will of the voters in states like Colorado and 22 other jurisdictions to move forward, Small business owners, medical marijuana patients, and others who follow state law still live with the fear that a new administration, or this one, could reverse course and turn us into criminals again. It's time to for us to replace this failed prohibition with a regulatory system that works and let states and municipalities decide for themselves if they want or don't want to have legal marijuana in their jurisdiction. Congress has been ignoring our broken and outdated marijuana laws for decades. Their failure to let go of prohibition is causing serious problems for state governments and interfering in the lives of countless Americans. It's time for our federal representatives to come to grips with the fact that marijuana is safer than alcohol, and most people think it should be treated that way. We commend Congressman Paulus and our own Portland Representative Earl Blumenauer for proposing a new way forward. Their colleagues should be ready to listen and take an objective look at the benefits of replacing prohibition with a system of regulation. Members who consider it unthinkable to turn to alcohol prohibition need to ask themselves why they're clinging to the prohibition of a less harmful substance. These bills would regulate and tax marijuana, taking the cultivation and sale out of the underground market and allowing it to be controlled by legitimate businesses under the close watch of authorities. Marijuana would be grown in licensed facilities instead of national forests and basements in suburbs. It would be sold in stores that create good jobs and generate tax revenue instead of the streets where it benefits cartels and criminals. More than half of Americans now live in states where access to medical or adult-use marijuana is legal at the state level. It's time for the federal laws that respect these states who've decided a legal regulated approach is smarter and safer than the failure of marijuana prohibition. The leadership of Representative Blumenauer and Representative Paulus on these issues puts them in line with the majority of Americans who think that states should have the freedom to tax and regulate marijuana, and that state legal cannabis businesses should not be prosecuted under federal law. Our police and law enforcement have better things to worry about than the recreational habits of responsible, nonviolent adults. And dispensary owners have better things to worry about than whether the federal government is going to arrest them and seize their assets for acting in accordance with state law. National trends reflect state efforts. More than 46% of people 18 and older have tried marijuana at least once, and public opinion research reveals more than half of the United States population supports legalization. Yet even as states and local governments have taken the lead in finding legal arrangements for marijuana, federal law classifies it among the most dangerous illegal drugs. The enforcement of these laws wastes federal resources and ruins lives. Individuals, states, and marijuana businesses are trapped in a patchwork of conflicting state and federal laws. It's time for Congress to end the federal prohibition of marijuana, remove it from the Controlled Substances Act, and create a sensible tax and regulatory framework. This represents a unique opportunity to save ruined lives, waste enforcement dollars, prison costs, while simultaneously helping to create a new industry with new jobs and revenue that will improve the budget outlook for all government citizens. Our next story is out of Boulder, Colorado. Marijuana use is not associated with structural changes in the brain, according to imaging data published in the Journal of Neuroscience. Investigators from the University of Colorado at Boulder and the University of Louisville in Kentucky assessed the brain morphology of both daily adult and adolescent cannabis users compared to non-users, with a particular focus on whether any differences were identifiable in the hippocampus, amygdala, and cerebellum. Investigators reported no statistically significant differences between daily users and non-users on volume or shape in the regions of interest after researchers controlled for participants' use of alcohol. The results indicate that when carefully controlling for alcohol use, gender, age, and other variables, there's no association between marijuana use and the standard volumetric or shape measurements of subcortical structures. The study's results failed to replicate well-publicized findings reported in the same journal in 2014, purporting to associate cannabis use by young adults with changes in brain morphology. The authors of the new study theorized that the contradictory results were likely because of previous researchers' failure to adequately control for the effects of alcohol, which, quote, has been unequivocally associated with deleterious effects on brain morphology and cognition in both adults and adolescents, end quote. The researchers concluded, quote, it seems unlikely that marijuana use has the same level of long-term deleterious effects on brain morphology as other drugs like alcohol. The press may not cite studies that do not find sensationalist effects, but these studies are still extremely important, end quote. The study, Daily Marijuana Use is Not Associated with Morphometric Measures in Adolescents or Adults, appears in this month's edition of the journal Neuroscience. Out of Dresden, Germany, the health risks associated with the use of cannabis have likely been overestimated, while the dangers associated with the consumption of alcohol have been commonly underestimated, according to the findings of a risk assessment study published in the journal Nature Scientific Reports. An international team of investigators from Germany and Canada performed a comparative risk assessment of various substances, including alcohol, tobacco, opiates, cannabis, and cocaine, based on their level of toxicity following human exposure. The authors reported that cannabis possessed the lowest risk of any of the substances assessed, while alcohol possessed the highest risk. The results point to a risk management prioritization toward alcohol and tobacco rather than the illicit drugs, the authors concluded, and that cannabis's low-risk categorization suggests a strict regulatory approach rather than the current prohibition approach. The study, Comparative Risk Assessment of Alcohol, Tobacco, Cannabis, and Other Illicit Drugs Using the Margin of Exposure Approach, appears online at nih.gov. That's nih.gov. It's already qualified for a vote for full legalization in the state of Nevada, and it's likely that both California and New Mexico will vote on marijuana legalization in November 2016 as well. This week we also saw bills move forward in the legislature to regulate marijuana like alcohol in Vermont and the state of Maryland. So we're seeing a lot of progress throughout the country and the world, in fact. So we're going to jump over now. That's the end of our Hemp News segment. Mr. John Cornett is ready to tell us why it's so good.
Oh, it's so good, Paul. Casper wanted me to do just your kind of Stonerland song, so here we go. This is called So Good. We like train wreck, northern lights. We like Shrek 2, sour diesel. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good for you and me. So good. So good. So good. So good. We like God, but purple haze. We like cheese too, Cinderella. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good for you and me. So good. So good. So good. So good. It don't matter which you like. Don't matter when you do it. Just matters that you do it right. And get down to it. So good. So good. So good. We like train wreck, northern lights. We like Shrek 2, sour diesel. Life is good. Life is good. Life is good for you and me. So
All right, Mr. John Cornett.
Thank you.
That was so good, John. Appreciate that. How are you, Casper?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Very well, very well. Hey, it's good to have you on, Joy.
Good to see you, Paul.
Thanks for coming on. If you are out there tonight and you're watching on the 20th of February, 2015, you can call us at that number there on your screen. If you have a question about ending adult marijuana prohibition, restoring industrial hemp, helping medical marijuana patients, or the implementation of these new regulatory laws, give us a call at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. So, Joy, I know you've been in the process of fighting a, I should hand you this. Oh, you got one. Good. All right, that works. I didn't see that. You're fighting a battle. Tell our audience about what you're going through.
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding as far as verbiage when it comes to legal terminology such as Native Americans.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and try this one on.
Okay.
You can't. Oh.
That happens.
All right.
There.
There you
Go ahead, Joy. I didn't mean to throw you off.
Okay. But when they first put me on the stand, of course, to look at me, the first thing that the district attorney says is, "Are you a Native American?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I was born here. What about you?" So what I'm fighting is basically it's a birthright, with the help and the support and the authority of James Mooney and Ocklawaha Native American Church. We're making a stand for all of our birthrights. The dirt and all that comes from it is the blood and the bone of our ancestors, and so.
So you've been arrested, though, and you're being charged in a certain county here in Oregon, right?
Yeah, Grant County, Oregon.
Grant County, Oregon. So that's out in eastern central Oregon?
Yeah.
And so tell us about how that started and what happened and how you got to be on the stand.
Well, try to make it short. In March, we did ceremony commencing that to be the sacred ceremonial grounds of our Central Eastern Oregon church, and that's under the RLUIPA law, which is the Religious Land Use Incarceration Persons Act of 2000. And in June, we had some members come from Missouri to start renovating the property for ceremonial reasonings, and including that was a sacrament garden of cannabis. And there were 33 plants to be planted. There were 13 in the ground before the law enforcement came in. They're saying
When did they come in?
It was, I believe, June 16th.
Of 2014.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they came in and they pulled them up, obviously.
They pulled them up. They arrested the 2 church members that were on the site. They charged them with possessing marijuana and manufacturing within 1,000 feet of a school. There wasn't any what they defined marijuana by the lack of THC. The tallest plant of the 13 was 8.5 inches. So it didn't meet their standards. So now they dropped that down to just 1,000 feet of a school manufacture charge. This is Class A felony. Statute-wise, it says that it's a maximum of 10 years. The judge has told the co-defendant he will be facing...
So are you in federal court?
No, we're in a state
court.
circuit
Okay.
court, yeah. The judge told the co-defendant he faces between 15 to 20 years, and he told me that I am facing 20 years.
Have you been convicted of a marijuana crime before?
I have no criminal.
So under, they have these penalties, but there's a matrix system that guides sentencing. So, but still, you don't want to be sent to jail for marijuana. So you're fighting this on the grounds of religious necessity?
Well, yeah. Utah Supreme Court ruled that we have the right as native-born Americans who are registered with the Native American Church, particularly, are recognized as having the rights to all what they defined as earth-based healing sacraments. And cannabis is what we feel is the mother medicine, because we have yet to find a plant more healing and beneficial. which is what a mother does. So we have the standing. However, the standing is for recognized as peyote because of the rulings were based around that.
The peyote
Yeah.
rounds that were fought in the Supreme Court.
Right.
So the Congress drafted a law saying that religious use of these plant substances is protected.
Of Schedule 1, yeah. Our church has a DEA number through Texas for that says we have the right to utilize and manufacture and possess and ceremonial use all Control 1 substance, which is what the federal definition of it is. This is a state charge somehow. I've challenged them. I felt I had a motion to dismiss on the grounds of lack of jurisdiction. First, that we're church. Second, we're Native American church. And third, those were cannabis indica, and those were never federally controlled substance. So, but the judge recently has said that he's, even though he recognizes we are a church, he's inclined to move forward. He's got some connection to cannibalism to do with the Native American church, which I'm still kind of confused.
Well, maybe it's the fact that cannibals and cannabis, they both sound similar, and he's a little confused about that or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because he keeps insinuating that if he recognizes that cannabis is a sacrament that we use, then we're going to be eating each other, and it confuses me.
So have you got an attorney who's filing motions based on these issues? Are you filing motions for...
That's where it's a little bit confusing for me lately. The last few weeks, since this order came out, I have the Mother Church, James Mooney, my codependent. We've all been saying that order, saying that we can't use religious terminology or claims in front of a jury of our peers. That's a wrong decision. That we need to appeal that, fix that before we go to a trial. But the lawyers, for some reason, have been rather reluctant to move in that direction. There's been no...
Are these court-appointed lawyers?
Most of the players are. Brian Michaels I privately retained.
Okay. How's Brian Michaels look at this?
That's a good question that I'm eager to hear.
Okay. Well, I would encourage you to continue that fight. And so we'll be happy to cover it as time goes by as well. We have a caller standing by, though. Let's go ahead and take that phone call. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well. How are you tonight?
Not too bad. I sent you a message yesterday or the other day on Facebook.
I have not been on Facebook for a couple of weeks. I've been busy traveling and other things.
Oh, well, somebody else must have responded back in the PM then.
Oh, okay.
But it was to you, and it was talking about this 12-to-1 advanced grow techniques.
Okay.
That they're doing out there. It's 12 hour for their veg cycle. It's 12 hours on, 5.5 hours off, 1 hour on, which stops the blooming cycle, then back to 5.5 hours off, and then repeat the cycle for their veg cycle.
Okay.
They're saying that the plant and then their bloom cycle, they're doing 6 on and 18 off, and what they're doing is they're actually claiming that it'll lower your cost by up to 75% and increase your yield by up to 30 to 40%.
Okay. So you're talking about indoor cultivation and adjusting the light cycle inside a 24-hour cycle.
Right.
To where it varies from the standard, which under most people usually vegetate their plants, get vegetative growth at 18 hours of light on and 6 hours off, which
Right.
obviously means you're paying to run those bulbs for 18 hours a day. And then for the flower cycle, most people run them at 12 hours on
Right.
and 12 hours off. So how did you hear about this other? I've heard of some other light cycles, but this
Facebook
is
page.
a little bit different than anyone I think I've heard of before.
Well, there's a Facebook page being promoted by a guy by the name of Joe Petrie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know Joe. He's been on this show a couple times.
Okay, and then I've also been looking into the Kogo's plant food that they're advertising, that Ray Anthony, a guy by the name of Ray Anthony, is promoting as well. But they
I'm
use
not
them in
familiar with that.
combination together. But they're showing some awesome pictures on Facebook of this stuff.
Okay, well, I can't speak to it specifically because I really don't know about it, but it sounds interesting. I should take a look at it.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the message I sent you on Facebook. It might be something you could check into, because if it's all true, then it's something we all need to know.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what they're saying is that the plant can only take in 6 hours of photosynthesis in the bloom cycle. So after 6 hours, it stops taking in CO2. And that's why they're saying they get such a better production out of it's a short day, long night plant or something like that is what they're talking about.
Okay.
And they've done some studies at OHSU or Oregon State, one of the two. But on Joe Petrie's 12-1 Advanced Grow Techniques, it lists all the different articles and stuff and studies that have been done on it. Mm-hmm. It all sounds great, but again, I haven't found too many people that know much about it.
You know, I can't speak to it at all. I do know Joe Petrie had a book out called The King of Hash about his experiences in Nepal. We had him on a while in the past.
He's promoting the book now.
But we haven't had him on in a long time. He's been
right.
Kind of a loose cannon out there, you might say. But
well, and like I said, you hear everybody's got a lot of ways of doing things.
That's right.
There's
a lot of
1,001
different ways to do
that
things.
work. What works for one guy may not work for everybody, but everything seems to work.
Uh-huh. Well,
so
I will try to find out more about it, and I appreciate you calling in and letting our viewers know.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your call.
All right, bye.
If you have a question for us tonight, you can call us. That number there on your screen, it's 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. So, Casper, how has your week been?
Very good. We're getting the website all up to date. We're getting the newsletter laid back out again, getting the subscriptions back to the newsletter. And so we got a lot of going on at the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Make it a point to stop by, say hello, and check it out. Website will be done by the end of the weekend, so go about every 12 hours. You'll see all the new updates that are happening between now and then, and share it with your friends.
And so how many hosts do you currently have on your radio network?
I don't know. I got to stop and take a count. It's been that many. It's been that long. I tell you, we got lots of great new content coming out every day on the broadcasting network, and we do have a lot of hosts that are broadcasting about the need to end prohibition and how important it is to reintroduce hemp as a cash crop back into the farming community, and how god-awful it is to be arresting medical marijuana patients and calling them criminals. We are a growing group of activists.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. We've got another caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello?
Howdy.
Hi. I just wanted to emphasize, like, on the 4-plant limit, if they're having those hearings in Salem, it needs to be 4 mature female plants, not just 4 plants of any size or type.
Yeah, I agree. 4 plants, you can have 4 little plants, and it wouldn't mean much of anything. So.
Right.
So you're talking about how Measure 91, the Oregon law that's now, we passed with 56% of the vote last November.
Right.
2014, that says that each household can grow 4 cannabis plants and have up to 8 ounces. It also specifies the amount of food and liquid cannabis products you can have as well. But I agree that 4 plants is not that much. In Colorado, you can have 6 plants and everything those 6 plants produces at the grow site. So I think limiting those plants to 8 ounces is problematic. But we should also point out that medical marijuana patients can add those 4 plants to their garden. So if they're allowed 6 plants per patient, then they can also add 4 plants per household under this law.
Right. But yeah, it definitely needs to be 4 mature female plants.
Yeah. So I think the point you want to make is there's a hearing this week, and we need to contact our state representatives in Salem. It's a legislative session here in the state of Oregon. So if you're an Oregon resident, you should contact your legislators or go down to this hearing and look online to find out more about it. But contact your legislators and urge them to protect Measure 91 and to allow 4 mature female plants to be grown per household.
Right. Thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, good night.
You know, we have a little video clip we've dug out of the archives. Here is May Nutt from back in 1991, sitting down with a much younger Casper Leach. So stay tuned.
You also testified before the DEA in 1988.
I did indeed.
And now, what came from that, and who did you speak with when you were
Oh, I testified in front of a Judge Francis Young, very intelligent man. And the feeling of the people that I was working with, normal, and he was going to brush it off.
Okay.
We were going to finish our testimony, and 15 minutes later he was going to say, forget it. He didn't do that. He agonized over this for a long time. And he was only to make a recommendation to the head of DEA. He couldn't make the decision. And he recommended wholeheartedly. And he had heard people all over the United States from all different kinds of illnesses and said, in effect, for God's sakes, help these people.
And what kind of response did he receive?
The head of DEA, in effect, said drop dead.
Why do you think that is?
Because they're stupid.
Okay. Now, we only have a couple of minutes left, and I was wondering, you commented that people of an older generation than what I am have a problem at times being able to restructure their thinking on this plant. What do you have to say to them?
Okay. We were told, and I came from an era that if my government told me, go out and stand in the middle of the traffic, I'd probably do it, because they would never tell me anything that was harmful. And it has taken me a long time to realize this is no longer true. Maybe it never was, but I thought it was. And so therefore, it's difficult. It's like a religion. You may go away from the religion that you were brought up as a child, but it's always there. Oh, go with your gut feeling. If you think you're right, go for it.
Thank you very much.
Marijuana with you.
With me.
Back in 1991. Was that down in California?
No, that's when I went to the National Normal Conference to be a guest speaker for their 21st anniversary. It was in 1991, and May Nutt was talking about how she had gone to she had gone to the Supreme Court to testify on behalf of her son, who was in a Michigan hospital as a veteran, needing his veterans medicine, and also needing medical marijuana, being placed in a situation where, as a veteran in a veterans hospital, if he smoked marijuana, they would kick him out of the hospital. And if he didn't smoke marijuana, the medication they were giving him wasn't helping him enough. And so she went to the Supreme Court of the United States on behalf of her son to have medical marijuana, and the Supreme Court ruled that her son could have medical marijuana as a veteran in the Veterans Hospital, and the day they ruled that was the same day he passed away.
That's very sad.
So he lived long enough to see the rule change for other people, but he died the same day and could not benefit from it. And it was a very sad story.
It's been very hard for his mother there.
Very hard for her to talk about it, but she made it a point to take his death and to turn it into something positive so that others could benefit from what they learned and what they had to share. So very, very brave woman, yes.
So we have another caller on the television, on the phone line. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yes, I was wondering if you could clarify for me, if you live in an apartment with the new rules coming up and you have a medical marijuana license, am I going to be kicked out if I decide to grow something here, even though they say it's legal for me here? What are things that could happen to me?
You know, as long as you have a medical marijuana license, they cannot kick you out, but they could say they want to they wouldn't renew your lease when it comes time to renew your lease in your apartment. Now, there are some apartments that are cannabis friendly. I know you live in one, don't you, Casper?
I do. when they found out that as a full-time occupation I was a marijuana activist, their comment was, "You'll probably want a apartment facing the sun." And I said, "Why?" She said, "So you can grow your plants." So
some
But
apartments
I
like
don't have a
his,
lease. I'm month
he's
to
act.
month, so I figure I have no recourse. in a
He
month-to-month
lives in Wimbledon Square in Wimbledon Green, which is actually the largest apartment complex here in the city of Portland. It's right over by Reed College. And I know many people who are able to grow their own cannabis there, but different facilities have different rules. And as long as you can suppress the smell where it doesn't bother your neighbors, your likelihood of being able to proceed is very good. But
And the filters are pretty good now, don't you think?
They are. They're expensive, but they're very good.
All right. I thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for your call.
Bye-bye.
We have a little show and tell we've got tonight. I'm going to start out with a couple of pictures that hemp man Eric Loitz has brought in to us. This is a 1942, April of 1942, United States Department of Agriculture photo of U.S. Army guarding the nation's main supply of hemp seed, stored temporarily in a tobacco warehouse in Lexington, Kentucky, a control point for the distribution of hemp seed to Kentucky farmers. Again, this is a United States Department of Agriculture picture from April of 1942. And right here is another picture, also from April of 1942, showing the hemp seed bought by the governments, packed in bags of various sizes for sale to Kentucky farmers so they could cultivate hemp. You see they've got a big wheelbarrow full of hemp seeds. They're scooping it up and putting it into bags that are going to farmers who are going to be cultivating industrial hemp. It should be noted that this is not the ultra low THC hemp that is currently approved by Canadian and European governments with less than 0.3%. This was native American hemp that probably had a THC level of between 1 and 3%. And so they were growing that for fiber. It's much more productive than the low THC hemp varieties that are allowed. Now I'm going to go over to a couple of items here. This is a box of hemp corn plasters from Seaberry. Seaberry was a predecessor to Johnson & Johnson. They became Seaberry & Johnson and then morphed into Johnson & Johnson. It's printed on the inside here, and it's from the 1870s. Right next to it, from the 1920s, is something from Johnson & Johnson. This was a salicylic acid or aspirin and cannabis plaster. And so this is a big plaster. You would put it on various skin ailments and use it to treat skin ailments. Right next to it, we have a couple of very unique bottles. This one is particularly unique. This is an experimental container from the United States DEA. It says the expiration date on this is July of 1982. This is from the late 70s. It was a test bottle of what became Marinol. And so this was during its experimental period before it was approved for sale as a prescription drug. Right next to it, we have one of the bottles that's used as from I think 2005, a modern bottle with a couple little Marinol pills in there. And this is now it's a Schedule III drug that is pretty expensive pharmaceutical substitute. It's synthetic THC suspended in sesame oil. And so it's little gel caps of THC with sesame oil. Right next to it, we have a 1915 bottle. It's a powdered extract of cannabis from Eli Lilly and Company. This was powdered hashish. And so Eli Lilly had a variety of cannabis products. You'll see this one says it's number 28. So they had about 10 different cannabis products. This one was powdered hashish. Right next to it, we have another Eli Lilly product, cannabis extract. This one is number 96, and this is also from 1910, and it's got a nifty instruction label on the back, and it has a picture of Eli Lilly's Indianapolis, Indiana facility on there. A lot of bubbles in this bottle. It's a very old bottle. Right next to it from Sharp and Dome, we have another cannabis extract, Sharp and Dome. This one is actually a full unopened bottle of mentholated cough balsam. It was for coughs, colds, spasmodic croup, bronchial cataracts, and other diseases of the air passages. And so it is chloroform, cannabis americana, and alcohol combined with menthol, ammonium chloride, and other things. And so it's the chloroform alone would probably knock you out, but there's some cannabis in there too. There is a full bottle that I am not going to try to extricate from this box because it's kind of stuck in there and I don't want to damage it. But it's another cannabis remedy, as you can see from the top. It's Bliss Native Balsam. Bliss Native Balsam. And it's also for coughs and colds from a Washington, D.C., Kansas City, and Montreal, Canada company. It contains grains of cannabis and other valuable ingredients for coughs, colds, and bronchitis. And both of these say they contains no morphine and no opiate or their derivatives, and is safe and non-addictive. And also from the Balsam Company, this was included in this nifty little pack, are samples of these cannabis pills, little cannabis pills circa 1910. And so there's, then right next to it is our Hemp Flame of Freedom. We have a hemp oil wick, and this is next week's wick. It just was cut off there tonight. And so we've got hemp seed oil powering this flame with a hemp wick, completely 100% hemp energy. That's the main reason that marijuana was criminalized. As our long-term viewers know, it's always been about the petrochemical industry. And so right next to it, we have another bottle, a very big bottle. We'll have to back up a bit. This is a tincture of cannabis bottle, a cobalt blue bottle that Eric Himpman Leutz has also brought in here, the guy who brought us these pictures tonight and other stuff. We're happy to continue working with him. Thank you, Eric, for bringing in this nifty new find of yours. Then, of course, we have a big hemp stalk to show the fiber that cannabis is capable of producing. Very large piece of hemp. All right. So that's the end of our show and tell, our sharing segment for tonight. But we had some pretty nifty little items on, I think you'll agree. So Joy, what is the next step in your legal battle? What have you got to do next?
Well, we're hoping that an appeal is going to be filed on that decision. As of now, we're scheduled in court March 5th, I think 3 o'clock.
What's the county seat of Grant County? What city are you in? In Grant County, what's the name of the town?
Oh, it's the courthouse is in Canyon City.
Canyon City, okay. Yeah. It's a small county.
Oh, yeah. Well, Grant County is actually kind of the large four.
Geographically, it's large.
Right. But
population-wise, it's very small.
Very small.
Right.
So
you're going to be back in court there on the 5th.
Yeah, they're wanting a plea entry because they're not wanting the religious defense as a plea.
So you're going to plead not guilty?
That's still in the air.
Okay. I know if you're going to preserve your appellate rights on the religious issue, I think you have to plead not guilty. If you plead guilty, then you might not be able to appeal. So you got to consider that.
Right. The only question we're having over that is that to say not guilty is to implicate that you're not guilty of a crime. And our standing is there was no crime. There's no victim of records. You know, they're saying the elementary school was the victim, but that's a building. School was out for the summer. The building was more than 1,000 feet from the school. It's the schoolyard that's crow flying at 822 feet.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things we have in common that Casper and I have in common with you, Joy, is that we all worked and associated with the late, great Jack Herer, the author of the Emperor Wears No Clothes, about the history of hemp and marijuana. So I know you were working with Jack as he gave his last speech at our Hempstock Festival back in 2009. Casper worked with him in the 90s. I worked with him from 1982 forward. I was there that day, of course, when he gave his last speech as well. So that's just a common denominator I thought I would point out. We have a caller who's standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yeah, hi there, Paul. It's Doreen. I had a couple of questions. The first one that I think must be relevant for other people is, hi, Casper. Hi, guys. Is what happens to people that have medical marijuana cards right now but need to renew it, say, in April, and it's going to become legal soon? Do we still need to pay all that money to renew our cards?
Well, the thing is, there are no legal ways except growing your own to obtain cannabis in the legal market for at least another 10 or 11 months. So if you're in a position to grow your own, you'll be legal to grow 4 marijuana plants. But if you want to continue to have the protection, allowed to be have up to 24 ounces of marijuana on your person instead of 1 ounce, being allowed to have 24 ounces at your home instead of 8 ounces, then, or you want to visit a dispensary, then you need to keep your medical marijuana card. Also, the marijuana that will be sold in the stores will be taxed, and medical marijuana is not subjected to that tax.
Oh, well, thank you for telling me all that. That was a great answer. I hope it's beneficial for other people, too.
Yeah.
My next thing, of course, is I unfortunately don't live in a place where I could grow, and I just wanted to know the name of where Casper lives, but perhaps I could.
It's Wimbledon Green and Wimbledon Square Apartments over near Reed College.
Whoa.
Wimbledon Square and Wimbledon Green Apartments. We're giving them free advertising here tonight, I guess, for our community.
Right.
But they do allow patients, medical patients, to grow their own cannabis there, and it is the largest apartment complex in the city of Portland.
Everybody in Portland, come on over and party tomorrow night.
What's it?
I said, everybody in Portland, come on over to Wimbledon Square and party tomorrow night.
Sounds great to me.
There you go.
Anyway, I hope to talk to you soon, Paul, and enjoy. And thanks so much, both you guys, for all you've done for everybody.
Hey, we're glad to do it. I'll talk to you soon, Doreen. Have a good night.
Great. You too. Take care. Bye.
Good night. In full disclosure, I am the caregiver for Doreen under Oregon's medical marijuana law. We have a caller standing by, though. Welcome to the show, caller.
Is that me?
That's you.
Hello, greetings from Tennessee.
Hey, Tennessee. What part of Tennessee are you in?
Baltimore.
Are you in western or eastern or in between?
I'm in eastern Tennessee near the Georgia-Carolina border.
Okay, down near Chattanooga.
You're right. Yeah, Polk County, middle of nowhere, but beautiful.
There's some beautiful area in that part of the country.
Absolutely. Waves back. I'm calling because I got an email from Normal talking about how there's 2 bills in Tennessee that they're introducing to depenalize minor marijuana offenses, House Bill 873 and Senate Bill 1211, which they're saying would eliminate criminal and civil penalties on offenses involving a half ounce of marijuana. Also reduce penalties for those offenses involving more than a half ounce, but less than an ounce, to a $100 fine.
Sounds like a good move.
Well, yeah, I just wish it would be completely decriminalized, legalized, taken off the Schedule 1, in the perfect world.
It'll happen soon.
Yeah, currently, I have my only brother, who's 42 years old, has terminal spindle cell neoplasm melanoma, and he won't do, he won't smoke weed or anything like that because he's afraid he'll lose his kids, and he will.
Sure.
They'll take his house, they'll take his kids,
yeah.
They'll take everything he owns and lock him up to die.
They're very cruel.
I don't know. I think there's so many people involved with trying to keep it illegal and maintain this prohibition, which only increases, criminal activity or, it didn't work for alcohol, obviously.
Right.
But, between the paper industry and the pharmaceutical corporations and, You know, even the alcohol industry, they pay good money to make sure weed stays illegal.
That's right. They do.
You know,
They contribute a lot of money to the DARE program and other initiatives to end prohibition.
Yeah, I just hope that if anyone is out there listening and they're from Tennessee, call your representatives and have them support and pass these two bills, House Bill 873 and Senate Bill 1211, and stop the ridiculous, outrageous, you know, I mean, the forfeitures alone. I think the local counties here just got $750,000 in forfeiture of property.
Wow.
And they're using that money to back more, you know, drug programs, anti-drug programs. You know, and I'm like, what does...
Well, it's a racket. It's a racket.
Yeah, what does a small-town sheriff's office need $750,000 for? If anything, it should go to the taxpayers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
But,
just strong.
I'm totally digging your show. I'm
Well,
a
thank
child
you.
of the '60s from you know, North New York, and you know, it's time. It's past time. It's a cash crop, and it's good for everybody.
I agree. Well, come on out to Oregon. If your brother decides he wants to come out here for treatment, he will be legal, and we'll be happy to help him. And
Are you kidding? If it wasn't so cold, because I moved down south because I don't like the cold. But it's been like 9 degrees and snowing, so
wow.
I don't think there's anywhere to get away from it anymore.
It was 67 and sunny today here in Portland.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was a frosty 58 degrees last night, so.
Now I'm jealous.
Well, it'll warm
but
up
yes,
down there.
So, you know, I'm trying to maintain a secret grow for myself, my own personal use. I don't do any pharmaceuticals. I don't take pills. I don't drink.
Well, be very careful down there. We appreciate your watching our show, and thanks for pointing out to our viewers how they can get involved in changing the laws there in Tennessee.
And tell your friends about timeforhemp.com. Shameless plug.
All right. Thank you very much. You know, we have just a few minutes left here. So, Joy, you want to tell any of our viewers anything we can do to help you in your case, or your next court appearance is coming up here in about 2 weeks?
Yeah, March 5th at 3 o'clock in Grant County Circuit Court, Canyon City. The support, you know, Human Solutions International are really trying to come up with court support and cannabis prisoner support and that kind of thing. I encourage that. They've been really helping with the case, and hopefully we'll get this resolved and cleared up about it being all right.
Well, I appreciate you out there pushing that right and working for expanding individual rights regarding cannabis, Joy. Casper, how can people tune into your network and find out more about Time for Hemp? One more time.
Timeforhemp.com. You can always check us out there. We've also got a Google app that you can find in the Google Store to download into your Android handheld devices. And we will soon have one for the Apple devices. You can also find us on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and of course, we are the only all-cannabis 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week broadcasting network on iHeartRadio. So we are easy to locate by going to timeforhemp.com. And from our homepage, you can find all the ways that you can explore wonderful avenues to take Time for Hemp. Thank you again for the shameless plug.
All right. And if you want to get involved in the movement to end adult marijuana prohibition here in the United States and help move the bills forward in the Oregon legislature, give us a call at 503-235-4606. If you are trying to get a medical marijuana permit, we have doctors across the United States. Patients can actually get an Oregon state permit from the Oregon Health Authority for medical marijuana. It's only valid in the state of Oregon, but it also covers patients in states that have reciprocity. If you have a state permit, you're also covered in Michigan, Maine, Rhode Island, Washington, D.C., and Arizona and Nevada. So if you have an Oregon permit, then you are also covered in those other states as well. Those other states do not issue out-of-state permits. They only issue permits to their state people. If you are looking for a doctor to help you anywhere from Hawaii to Maine, give us a call at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you're here in the Portland area, you can call us locally at 503-281-5100. That's 503-281-5100. Well, we will be back with another show next week. We have Mr. John Cornett ready to play some more music. You ready, John? You think you can handle a couple minutes here?
I could probably swing it.
Okay.
Could you turn down this monitor, please?
We also have some nifty photos from our THCF medicinal garden we'll be running while John's singing. We want to thank you all for watching. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. Good night.